Tim's Mouthpiece, and I'm bringing you a review on Tom Wolfe's A Man in Full.
I told my boy go roll like 10 bloods for me.
When I think about this book, it definitely comes back to me in comic strip like paneled slides, maybe a little bit like a PowerPoint, but after researching Tom Wolfe a little bit more, I found that this is definitely more of a comic strip type analogy, considering his comedic journalistic style and his faux suave white suit appearance. Certainly unlike a comic strip, A Man in Full by Tom Wolfe was not by any means short. It was actually incredibly long. And my copy right here had a whopping 690 pages. And I'm not sure if that was a nod towards an innuendo, but this is Tom Wolfe's book, and I feel like he had to have some sort of input on how long he was going to have it pages-wise. So I'm going to leave it at that. And these weren't like pages in a mystery book that you pick up at the library. These were your generally formal ink-written beasts that you catch on any sort of book. They're not your Charles Dickens type, but they're definitely going to take you a little bit to read each page. In short, this book was fat. So I'm going to get back to the content of the novel here. And overall, I felt like it was an interesting process of reading. And there were times when I didn't want to put this novel down and I would read for an hour or two at a time. But there were also times where I looked to the nearest trash can and said, this might be this book's home for the rest of its life. So that's not particularly unusual for any novel. There's always something that's wrong and you're a little bit bored at any certain point. Like, oh, this chapter isn't great, maybe I'll skip it. But the problem with this book here is that they were back-to-back pages. So you might be reading something interesting on one page, and the next one, you're filled with completely useless information. And this made the book way too long. And it was one of the contributing factors to the length of the book that I really disliked. And at the end of the book, I was absolutely overjoyed. Not because I felt that I was satisfied with the ending, because I felt like everything was tied together and solved in a way that didn't really make all that much sense, but because it was over. For all the trash I've talked about this book, I did actually enjoy the breadth of its experience. I felt like it was slightly reminiscent of War and Peace, if you've read that before, because it tried to encapsulate so much in one thing, but as Americanized and with the comedic element, I felt like the comedic elements might have definitely drained a little bit from the entire experience as a whole. But as far as the breadth goes, we get to experience freezer working meat packers, real estate mega tycoons, the first black mayor of Atlanta, possibly homosexual gang members in jail, illegally trafficked Asian Americans. What else do we get? We get 20-something gold diggers and communally estranged black lawyers and so many more, just all packed and shoved together, which is incredibly rare for a novel these days. And I found that one of the best elements of the book, honestly. But this isn't the summary of the book, so I'm just going to cover some of what I thought were the most important themes and metaphors that I found particularly interesting about this book. And for me, the most interesting one was the Old South versus the New South, and how the New South was absolutely clapping the Old South. And where this book starts off is Charlie Croker. He's our typical old Southern man. He owns a plantation in the modern age and has a thick Southern drawl. Like, this is pouring out like honey kind of Southern drawl, and Tom Wolfe makes this apparent with his onomatopoetic language. So there are plenty of characters like him in the novel, including Inman Armholster, who becomes absolutely instrumental through the end of the book. So we have to pay attention to him. But these strong characters with their old Southern habits are strongly juxtaposed with the first black mayor of Atlanta, or an extremely successful CFO of Charlie Croker Industries, who is called The Wiz. He wakes up every day, runs 6 miles, and then goes eats an avocado toast. he is highly reminiscent of today's millennials, and I'm not sure if that's the right time period for this book, but they're too similar. It's uncanny. So throughout the novel, Wolfe is just sprinkling on, like, that salt guy, all of these metaphors throughout, and just laying it out so it's just in your face, and it's really showing that the Old South, it has to get with the times. The New South is forcing it to get with the times. And my personal favorite example of this Old South being crushed by the New South idea is Charlie Croker being basically forced to buy this $20,000 table to this art exhibit while complaining about art exhibits the entire novel. And not only does he not like art exhibits, this art exhibit is showcasing fully nude queer paintings by some artist, I'm not sure I remember the name, but Charlie is definitely not a fan of gay people, and he is forced to pretend that he likes this to stay in with his social circles, which he so desperately desires. And probably the most important thing that Wolfe puts in here that solidifies this Old South being conquered by the New South metaphor is M.N. Armholster's daughter, and M.N. Armholster is the most prominent Old South figure in the entire novel. His daughter is raped by Fareed Fannin, who is the star football player for Georgia Tech, or the college that's around, and he's absolutely idolized by everyone in the community as a symbol of what the New South can be. So while this is a gruesome metaphor, Wolfe makes it apparent that the New South is going to force the Old South to conform to how it wants to be, whether it wants to or not. A Man in Full was definitely not one of my favorite novels, and will it be one of your favorites? Probably not, at least in my opinion. But I didn't hate it, and it didn't turn me off from Wolfe, and I still look forward to reading Bonfire of the Vanities by him in the future. However, his faults when it came to this novel I felt came from the breadth of the novel, which was also one of the reasons I was intrigued by it in the first place. I felt like he didn't really flesh out the underside of America like he was set out to do in this, although I think the exploration of the American aristocracy was pretty splendid, and especially in respect to the southern aspect of it. I hadn't really considered any of that or even seen that in another novel before, and I thought that was extremely unique and extremely interesting to hear about. But at the end of the day, it didn't really come together. However, I'm going to go back to my first thing that I talked about, the comic strip illusion, where I feel like I can piece together certain parts of the story and they all click together, and I get some weird gag of it out of the end and a little laugh like, haha, this all happened. And I feel like maybe that's what Wolfe is going for. I'm not sure if it's for me, maybe it's for you, but you'll just have to read it and find out. So I'm going to have to say that's the end of my first YouTube video. I appreciate you all tuning in, and if you could like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, I would really appreciate that. That would help me so much with making more YouTube videos, and I'll see you guys next time.
I told my boy go on like 10 bloods for me.